Some people say love can survive anything, but no one tells you what it feels like when the person you love wakes up one day and looks at you like a stranger. That was the moment Noah Bennett realized the life he had built with Lucas Harrington had vanished without a trace. 3 years earlier, everything had seemed impossibly perfect. Lucas was the heir to one of the most powerful corporate families in the country, a man raised among skyscrapers of glass and steel, boardrooms filled with quiet authority, and expectations heavy enough to shape an entire future. Noah was nothing like that world. He was gentle, thoughtful, the kind of person who noticed the warmth of a sunrise or the quiet comfort of fresh coffee on a cold morning. Yet somehow, against every rule Lucas's family had ever written for him, they had fallen deeply in love. Their marriage had been quiet and secret, a promise spoken not in front of crowds, but beneath soft city lights on a balcony high above Manhattan. For a brief time, it felt like the universe had paused just long enough for them to breathe in a happiness that belonged only to them. Then everything changed in a single moment. Lucas was involved in a serious accident that sent shockwaves through the Harrington family and the company empire tied to their name. When he finally opened his eyes in the hospital, the doctors called it a miracle. But the miracle came with a cost. Lucas had lost 3 full years of his memory. 3 years that included every moment he had spent with Noah. 3 years that erased their love, their marriage, and the future they had quietly begun building together. Before Noah could even process the shock, Lucas's family stepped in. To them, Noah had always been an inconvenience, someone who didn't belong in the carefully arranged life they had planned for their heir. With Lucas unable to remember anything, they took control of the situation with cold efficiency. Legal documents disappeared. Digital records were altered. Conversations were rewritten as if they had never happened. Within days, it was as though Noah Bennett had never existed in Lucas Harrington's life at all. Noah tried to fight it first, but he had no power against a family that owned corporations, lawyers, and influence that stretched across the country. And then he discovered something. That changed everything. He was pregnant. The child growing inside him was Lucas's son. In that moment, Noah understood that staying and fighting would only bring more pain to the life he now carried. So he made the hardest decision he had ever faced. He left. 3 years passed quietly in a small coastal town far away from the towering skyline of Lucas's world. Noah worked early mornings at a neighborhood bakery where the scent of warm bread filled the air before sunrise. It was a simple life, the kind measured not by corporate meetings but by school drop-offs, grocery lists, and bedtime stories. At the center of that small life was Oliver, a bright little boy with soft brown hair and eyes that looked strikingly like Lucas's. Every day Noah told himself that raising Oliver was enough, that the love they shared as a family of 2 was strong enough to fill the space left behind. But sometimes, late at night when the town was quiet and the ocean breeze carried through the window, Noah wondered if somewhere out there Lucas Harrington ever felt the faint echo of a life he had forgotten. Oliver Bennett was 3 years old when he first asked a question Noah had been quietly dreading since the day his son was born. It happened on a calm Saturday morning while the small coastal town was still waking up. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window of their modest apartment above the bakery, casting soft golden light across the wooden table where Oliver sat swinging his short legs back and forth. In front of him was a bowl of cereal that had slowly turned soggy because he had been far more interested in talking than eating. Noah stood at the counter preparing coffee, the familiar scent filling the small room as waves from the nearby ocean rolled quietly in the distance. Oliver looked up with wide, curious eyes that were far too thoughtful for a child his age. "Daddy," he asked slowly, "where is my other daddy?" The question landed gently in the room, but Noah felt it echo deep in his chest. For a moment he stood very still, holding the coffee mug as if the warmth might steady his thoughts. He had always known this moment would come eventually. Children notice things. They asked questions that adults could not easily answer. Noah walked over and sat beside his son, brushing a soft strand of brown hair away from Oliver's forehead. The resemblance to Lucas was becoming stronger every year. The same calm gray eyes. The same thoughtful expression when he was thinking about something important. Noah smiled softly, even though his heart felt heavier than usual. "Your other daddy is someone very special," Noah said carefully. "He just lives far away right now." Oliver considered the answer with serious concentration before nodding slowly, as if accepting a piece of information he would revisit later. Children had a way of sensing more than adults realized, but Oliver did not press further that morning. Instead, he returned to his cereal and began telling Noah about a drawing he planned to make at preschool that day. Noah listened attentively, grateful for the small shift in conversation, yet the question lingered quietly in his mind long after breakfast ended. Life in Havenport had become a rhythm Noah relied on. The town itself was small enough that people greeted one another by name at the grocery store and waved when passing on the sidewalk. The bakery downstairs had become more than a workplace. It was a second home filled with the warm scent of fresh bread and the comforting chatter of regular customers who came in every morning. Noah usually started his shift at 5:30 in the morning before the sun fully rose. By the time Oliver woke up, trays of pastries would already be cooling behind the glass display. Their routine was simple, but full of quiet happiness. Noah would walk Oliver to preschool 3 blocks away, holding his small hand as seagulls circled lazily above the harbor. After work, they often visited the beach where Oliver collected smooth stones and proudly showed them off, as if each one were a treasure. From the outside, their life appeared peaceful and complete. Yet sometimes when Noah watched Oliver laugh while chasing the waves along the shoreline, he could not ignore the gentle ache in his heart. Oliver deserved to know the father who shared his smile and the same calm strength in his eyes. Noah had spent 3 years convincing himself that the past was something he had to leave behind. Lucas Harrington had forgotten him, and the powerful Harrington family had made it very clear that Noah did not belong in their world anymore. But every once in a while, especially on quiet evenings when Oliver had fallen asleep and the town lights shimmered across the water, Noah would find himself staring out at the horizon and wondering if somewhere far away Lucas ever felt the faint pull of something missing, like a memory waiting patiently to be found. The morning Lucas Harrington arrived in Havenport began like any other day for Noah Bennett, quiet and ordinary, the kind of morning that carried the comforting smell of bread rising in the ovens downstairs. Noah stood behind the bakery counter arranging fresh pastries in neat rows, while the early sunlight filtered through the front windows, turning the glass display cases into warm reflections of gold and amber. The town was slowly waking up as fishermen walked toward the docks, and a few familiar customers stepped inside for their usual coffee before work. For Noah, mornings had become a safe rhythm, a pattern of simple tasks that helped him focus on the life he had built for himself and Oliver. Yet somewhere beyond the peaceful harbor, events were unfolding that would soon disturb that fragile calm. Several miles away, a sleek black car rolled quietly along the coastal highway, its polished surface reflecting the pale blue sky above the ocean. Inside sat Lucas Harrington, staring out the window as the landscape shifted from busy city streets to the quiet charm of small-town storefronts and white wooden houses. He had not planned to visit Havenport himself. The Harrington Group was launching a development project along the eastern shoreline, and Lucas had insisted on reviewing the location personally before approving the final decision. Since recovering from the accident years earlier, Lucas had returned to his responsibilities with determination, guiding the company with calm intelligence that had impressed investors and board members alike. On paper, his life appeared perfectly restored, but privately, there was always a faint sense that something remained unfinished, like a song missing its final note. Sometimes he experienced moments he could not explain, brief flashes of emotion triggered by ordinary things, such as the scent of warm bread or the distant sound of ocean waves. His doctors had assured him that memory loss did not always return completely, and Lucas had accepted that explanation with practical calm. Still, there were days when a quiet restlessness lingered beneath the surface of his otherwise controlled life. The car slowed as it entered the center of Havenport, where small businesses lined the street beneath colorful awnings and seagulls circled above the harbor. Lucas glanced outside with mild curiosity until something caught his attention. On the corner stood a bakery with large windows and a simple wooden sign that read Harbor Morning Bakery. For reasons he could not immediately explain, Lucas felt an unexpected urge to step inside. He asked the driver to pull over, assuring him it would only take a few minutes. The bell above the bakery door chimed softly as Lucas entered, carrying with him the crisp ocean air from outside. The warm scent of cinnamon and fresh coffee wrapped around him instantly, creating a sense of comfort he had not felt in a long time. Noah was standing behind the counter placing a tray of blueberry muffins into the display when the sound of the door made him look up. For a fraction of a second, the world seemed to pause. Lucas Harrington stood only a few feet away, taller than Noah remembered, dressed in a tailored charcoal coat that reflected the quiet authority he carried naturally. 3 years had passed since Noah last saw him, yet the sight of Lucas standing there sent a wave of memories rushing through Noah's mind with overwhelming clarity. The quiet balcony where they once spoke about their future. The simple ring Lucas had placed on Noah's finger during their secret wedding. The promise they believed would last forever. Noah's hands tightened slightly around the tray he was holding as he struggled to steady his breathing. Lucas, however, looked at him with nothing more than polite curiosity, the calm expression of a man entering a new place for the first time. Their eyes met briefly across the counter, and Lucas felt something unexpected stir deep inside his chest, a faint sense of recognition he could not place. It was subtle and fleeting, like the echo of a distant memory just beyond reach. Noah lowered his gaze quickly, afraid that even one more second of eye contact might reveal emotions he had worked so hard to hide. The quiet life he had built suddenly felt far more fragile than it had only moments before, and neither of them realized that fate had just quietly begun pulling their lives back together. Lucas remained in the bakery longer than he originally planned that morning, standing quietly near the counter as if something invisible was encouraging him to stay. Noah forced himself to move through the familiar motions of his job, placing pastries into small paper bags and greeting customers with the same calm politeness he always showed. Yet every few seconds he felt Lucas's presence like a quiet gravity in the room. It had been 3 years since he last saw the man he once called his husband, but the way Lucas stood with that natural calm confidence was exactly the same. Lucas eventually stepped forward to the counter and glanced at the display with mild interest. "Everything smells incredible in here," he said warmly, his voice steady and professional, completely unaware of the storm of emotions his simple presence had stirred. Noah managed a small polite smile as he asked what he would like to order. Lucas chose a coffee and a blueberry muffin, then leaned casually against the counter while waiting. Up close, Noah noticed the subtle changes time had brought. Lucas looked slightly older, the lines of responsibility more defined around his eyes. Yet there was still the same quiet strength in his expression that had once made Noah feel completely safe. Lucas studied Noah for a moment with a curious expression that he could not quite explain. Something about the man behind the counter felt strangely familiar, like recognizing a melody without remembering where he had heard it before. He dismissed the thought as coincidence and accepted the coffee with a polite thank you before taking a seat near the window overlooking the harbor. Noah released a slow breath once Lucas stepped away, though the tension inside him did not disappear. For the rest of the morning, Lucas remained there, occasionally looking out toward the ocean while reviewing documents on his tablet. Several times his gaze drifted back toward the counter where Noah worked, and each time that quiet sense of familiarity returned. Meanwhile, Noah focused on finishing his shift, telling himself repeatedly that Lucas would leave soon and return to whatever world he belonged to now. Yet fate seemed to have different plans. Later that afternoon, Noah walked to Oliver's preschool to pick him up, holding the small backpack while the children gathered outside the building. Oliver ran toward him the moment he saw him, excitement bright in his eyes as he began telling Noah about the drawing he made that day. They stopped briefly at the park near the harbor where Oliver loved to climb the wooden play structure shaped like a small lighthouse. Noah sat on a nearby bench watching his son laugh, while the afternoon sun reflected across the water. What he did not realize was that Lucas's car had stopped nearby while he was touring the area with a local developer. Lucas stepped out for a moment to take a phone call and glanced toward the park just as Oliver jumped down from the play structure and ran across the grass. Something about the child caught Lucas's attention immediately. It was not only the boy's bright expression but the strange sense of familiarity Lucas felt when he looked at him. Oliver slowed when he noticed Lucas standing nearby, curiosity lighting up his face in the way only young children could show. The boy walked a few steps closer and studied Lucas with open interest before speaking in a small, thoughtful voice. "Mister, you smell kind of like me." Lucas blinked in surprise at the unexpected comment and let out a quiet laugh, assuming the child meant the ocean breeze or the bakery scent still lingering on his coat. Noah heard Oliver's voice and quickly stood from the bench, his heart racing the moment he realized who was standing nearby. Lucas looked up and met Noah's eyes again, and once more that strange quiet pulse settled deep in his chest, stronger now than before, as if some invisible bond was patiently waiting to be remembered. Noah reached Oliver just as the little boy finished speaking, his heart pounding in a way that made the quiet afternoon suddenly feel fragile. Oliver looked back and forth between the two adults with innocent curiosity, unaware of the complicated history standing silently in front of him. Lucas straightened slightly when Noah approached, recognizing him immediately from the bakery earlier that morning. A polite smile crossed his face, calm and respectful, the expression of a man greeting someone he had only recently met. "We keep running into each other today," Lucas said lightly. Noah nodded, trying to keep his voice steady as he placed a gentle hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Havenport is a small town," he replied softly. Lucas looked down at Oliver again, that strange sense of familiarity returning with quiet persistence. The child's gray eyes were striking, almost identical to his own, though Lucas did not consciously notice the resemblance in that moment. Instead, he simply felt an unexpected warmth standing there, as if the scene unfolding in front of him carried a meaning he could not quite reach. Oliver smiled brightly and waved as if he had already decided Lucas was friendly. "Bye, mister," the boy said cheerfully before Noah gently guided him toward the path leading back home. Lucas watched them walk away across the grass, his attention lingering longer than he intended. Something about the interaction stayed with him even after he returned to the car and continued the rest of his meetings that afternoon. Later that evening, far away in the polished glass offices of Harrington Group's regional headquarters, the quiet balance surrounding Lucas's life began to shift in ways he did not yet understand. Lucas's visit to Havenport had not gone unnoticed. The Harrington family had long maintained a habit of monitoring Lucas's movements carefully, especially after the accident years earlier that had nearly taken his life. When a routine report mentioned that Lucas had spent time at a small bakery in Havenport and had later been seen speaking with a local resident at the harbor park, the information quickly reached the attention of his mother, Eleanor Harrington. Eleanor was a woman known for her calm composure and precise control over every detail connected to the Harrington legacy. She reviewed the report in silence inside her office overlooking the city skyline, her sharp eyes narrowing slightly as she studied the attached photographs. One image showed Lucas standing near the park while speaking to Noah. Another showed Oliver running across the grass only a few feet away. Eleanor tapped the desk slowly with one finger as she studied the child's face. Even in a simple photograph, the resemblance was unmistakable. The same eyes, the same expression Lucas had carried since childhood. Eleanor felt a quiet tension settle in her chest. 3 years earlier, when Lucas lost his memory after the accident, the Harrington family had taken decisive steps to erase a mistake they believed never should have happened. Noah Bennett had been removed from Lucas's life with careful efficiency. Every legal record of their private marriage had been quietly dissolved, and Noah had been encouraged to leave without creating complications for the Harrington name. Eleanor had believed the situation was permanently resolved. Yet now, a possibility she had never fully considered was staring back at her from the photograph on her desk. A child. If Oliver Bennett truly carried Lucas's bloodline, that child would represent a powerful claim within the Harrington legacy, one that could disrupt plans already carefully arranged for Lucas's future. Lucas was currently preparing to enter a strategic engagement with a partner family that would strengthen Harrington Group's global position. A secret child appearing at this stage would complicate everything. Eleanor closed the folder slowly, her expression thoughtful but controlled. Across the country, Noah was putting Oliver to bed in their small apartment above the bakery, unaware that powerful forces had just begun paying attention to the quiet life he had spent 3 years trying to protect. Meanwhile, Lucas stood alone on the balcony of his hotel room overlooking Havenport Harbor, the cool ocean air moving gently around him. He could not explain why the image of the child in the park continued to linger in his thoughts, or why the calm man from the bakery kept appearing in his mind with a familiarity that felt deeper than coincidence. Somewhere beneath the quiet surface of his memory, something long forgotten had begun to stir. The next morning, Lucas returned to Havenport earlier than his schedule required, though he did not fully admit to himself why. Officially, he told his assistant that he wanted to review the shoreline development site one more time before making the final decision for the Harrington Group. Unofficially, there was a quiet pull drawing him back toward the same small streets he had visited the day before. The town was already alive with the calm rhythm of coastal life when his car stopped near the harbor again. Fishermen were unloading their morning catch, and the smell of sea air mixed with the distant scent of coffee drifting from nearby cafes. Lucas stepped out of the car and walked slowly along the sidewalk, his thoughts unsettled in a way he had not experienced in years. The image of the little boy from the park had followed him throughout the night, appearing again and again in his mind with an odd familiarity he could not explain. Eventually his steps carried him naturally toward Harbor Morning Bakery. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, and the warm scent of fresh bread wrapped around him once again. Noah was already working behind the counter, placing trays of cinnamon rolls into the display while speaking quietly with a regular customer. When he noticed Lucas walking in, Noah felt the same tightness return to his chest that had followed him since the previous afternoon. He had hoped the encounter at the park would simply remain a coincidence, a brief crossing of paths that would fade as quickly as it arrived. But seeing Lucas again made it clear that fate was not finished weaving their lives together. Lucas greeted him with the same calm politeness as before and ordered another coffee, though his attention seemed more focused today. While Noah prepared the drink, Lucas found himself studying the small details around the bakery, the wooden shelves filled with jars of honey, the handwritten chalkboard menu, and the soft morning light that spilled through the windows. Strangely, the place felt comfortable to him in a way that had nothing to do with the pastries or the quiet town atmosphere. It felt personal, though he could not say why. A few minutes later the front door opened again, and Oliver rushed inside, holding a small drawing he had made at preschool. The boy ran straight to Noah with excitement shining in his eyes. "Daddy, look what I made," he said proudly while lifting the paper. The drawing showed a simple picture of three stick figures holding hands beside the ocean, a childlike version of a family standing together beneath a bright yellow sun. Noah knelt down to admire it, smiling warmly while Oliver explained every detail of the picture. Lucas watched the moment quietly from his seat near the window. Something about the scene stirred an unfamiliar ache inside him, a feeling of belonging that felt strangely close yet unreachable. Oliver eventually noticed Lucas again and waved enthusiastically. "Hi, mister," he said happily before climbing onto the stool beside Noah. Lucas returned the greeting with a friendly smile, yet as he looked at the boy more closely a subtle realization began forming in the back of his mind. The shape of Oliver's eyes, the calm expression when he concentrated, the quiet confidence in the way he held himself. The resemblance felt too strong to dismiss completely. At the same time, Noah sensed the shift in Lucas's attention and felt a quiet worry settle in his heart. For 3 years, he had protected Oliver from the powerful world that once pushed them away. Now that same world seemed to be standing only a few feet away inside the bakery, observing them with growing curiosity. Meanwhile, far from Havenport, Eleanor Harrington had already begun making discreet inquiries about Noah Bennett and the child living with him. The answers she was receiving were slowly confirming the suspicion she had tried to ignore. And if her suspicions were correct, the fragile peace Noah had built around his son would soon face a challenge far greater than he had ever imagined. The quiet rhythm of Noah's life began to change in ways he could not control only a few days after Lucas's unexpected return to Havenport. At first the change was subtle, almost easy to ignore. Lucas continued visiting Harbor Morning Bakery every morning before his meetings, always ordering the same black coffee and sitting near the window that overlooked the harbor. The visits seemed casual, yet there was something about the way his eyes quietly followed Noah and Oliver that made Noah increasingly uneasy. Lucas never asked personal questions, but his attention carried a quiet intensity that suggested he was searching for answers he did not yet understand. Oliver, on the other hand, had no hesitation at all. Children rarely sensed the invisible walls adults tried to build around complicated situations. Within only a few days Oliver had begun greeting Lucas with the open friendliness he showed everyone in town. Sometimes the boy would sit at the small table near Lucas while drawing pictures with colored pencils Noah kept behind the counter. Lucas found himself unexpectedly enjoying these quiet moments. There was a calm honesty in Oliver's laughter that made the pressures of corporate meetings and financial reports feel strangely distant. One afternoon Lucas finished a phone call outside the bakery and noticed Oliver sitting on the steps while waiting for Noah to finish closing the shop. The boy was carefully examining a collection of smooth stones he had gathered from the beach earlier that day. Lucas walked over and crouched slightly to look at them. Oliver immediately began explaining which stones came from the shoreline and which ones he had found near the harbor pier. Lucas listened with genuine interest, though the simple conversation stirred something deeper inside him. Every small detail about the boy felt familiar in ways that were becoming harder to ignore. The shape of his smile, the calm confidence in his voice, Even the thoughtful way he chose his words. It was as if Lucas was looking at a reflection of something he had once known well. Noah stepped outside moments later and felt a quiet tension the instant he saw them together. Lucas looked up and offered a polite smile, though his expression held more seriousness than usual. After a brief moment of hesitation, Lucas spoke in a calm voice that carried an unexpected weight. "Noah, may I ask you something personal?" Noah felt his pulse quicken slightly, but nodded. Lucas glanced at Oliver before continuing carefully. "The boy reminds me of someone. I cannot explain it, but the resemblance is difficult to ignore." The words settled between them like a quiet truth neither of them could fully avoid any longer. Noah looked down at Oliver, who was now busy lining up his stones along the step as if building a small wall. For 3 years Noah had protected this secret with every ounce of strength he had. Yet standing there now, he could feel the fragile balance beginning to shift. Lucas watched him closely, not with accusation but with a growing sense of curiosity and concern. Somewhere deep inside his memory a faint echo was beginning to stir, something connected to Noah, to this town, and to the small boy playing quietly beside them. At the same time, far away in the city, Eleanor Harrington had received the final report from her investigators. The information confirmed what she had feared. Oliver Bennett was indeed Lucas Harrington's son. Eleanor stared at the report in silence before closing the folder slowly. She understood immediately that the situation could no longer be ignored. If Lucas discovered the truth on his own terms, everything she had carefully arranged for the future of the Harrington family could collapse overnight. Determined to control the outcome, Eleanor made a decision that would soon bring the full weight of the Harrington name directly into Noah's quiet world. Meanwhile, on the bakery steps in Havenport, Lucas continued watching Noah with that same quiet intensity, unaware that the truth he was beginning to sense would soon change all of their lives forever. The following morning, the calm streets of Havenport woke to a tension that Noah could feel long before he understood why. The ocean breeze moved gently through the harbor. As usual, and the bakery ovens warmed the small shop with the comforting scent of bread and cinnamon. Yet something in the air felt different. Noah had barely finished setting out the first tray of pastries when a sleek black sedan stopped in front of Harbor Morning Bakery. Cars like that did not belong in a quiet town like Havenport. The door opened slowly, and a woman stepped out with calm precision. Eleanor Harrington carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had spent her life commanding rooms far larger than a small coastal bakery. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, and her sharp eyes scanned the storefront as if evaluating every detail before she even stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed softly when she entered, but the presence she brought into the room felt far heavier than the gentle sound suggested. Noah looked up from behind the counter and felt the blood drain slightly from his face the moment he recognized her. 3 years had passed since he last saw Eleanor Harrington, but the memory of that day had never faded. She had been the one who calmly informed him that Lucas no longer remembered him, and that it would be better for everyone if Noah quietly disappeared from Lucas's life. Eleanor approached the counter with the same composed expression she had always carried. "Mr. Bennett," she said in a smooth voice that was polite but distant. Noah felt his hands tighten slightly around the coffee cup he was holding. "Mrs. Harrington," he replied carefully. For a moment neither of them spoke again. The quiet bakery suddenly felt smaller, as if the past had stepped directly back into the present without warning. Eleanor glanced around the room briefly before her gaze settled toward the corner where Oliver was sitting at a small table coloring in a picture with bright crayons. The resemblance was impossible to miss when seen up close. Lucas's eyes. Lucas's quiet focus. Eleanor inhaled slowly, as if confirming something she had already known. "I believe we should speak privately," she said. Noah hesitated for only a second before nodding and guiding her toward a small office room behind the kitchen. The moment the door closed, Eleanor spoke with calm clarity. "The child is Lucas's son." It was not a question. It was a statement. Noah remained silent, understanding immediately that denying the truth would accomplish nothing. Eleanor continued, her tone still controlled but firm. "You should understand the position this places our family in. Lucas is preparing to enter an engagement that will secure several international partnerships. The sudden appearance of an heir would complicate matters significantly." Noah felt a quiet strength rise inside him, the same strength that had carried him through 3 years of raising Oliver alone. "Oliver is not a complication," he said softly. "He is Lucas's child." Eleanor studied him carefully, perhaps noticing the determination she had once underestimated. "Lucas does not remember you," she replied calmly. "And until recently he did not know this child existed. It would be wise for you to keep it that way." The words hung in the air like a familiar threat wrapped in polite language. But something about the situation had changed since the last time they stood across from each other. This time Noah was not alone. When the office door opened again a few minutes later, Lucas himself was standing in the bakery doorway, having arrived earlier than expected for his usual morning visit. His eyes moved between Noah and his mother with quiet confusion as he sensed the tension in the room. Oliver looked up from his drawing and smiled the moment he saw Lucas again. And in that single moment, the fragile truth everyone had tried to control for 3 years stood quietly in the open, waiting for Lucas Harrington to finally see it. Lucas stood in the doorway of Harbor Morning Bakery, his eyes moving slowly between Noah, his mother, and the small boy sitting at the corner table. The quiet tension in the room was impossible to miss. For a moment no one spoke. The gentle sound of the ocean outside drifted through the open window while Oliver continued coloring his drawing, unaware that the moment unfolding around him was about to change everything. Lucas stepped forward slowly, his gaze settling on Noah first. "What is going on?" he asked calmly, though there was a seriousness in his voice that had not been there before. Eleanor Harrington answered before Noah could speak. "Lucas, there are matters we need to discuss privately," she said in the composed tone she had used throughout his entire life. But Lucas did not move toward her. His attention had already shifted toward Oliver, who looked up again and smiled the moment. Their eyes met. Something about that smile struck Lucas with an unexpected force. It was not just familiarity anymore. It was something deeper, something that seemed to pull at the edges of his memory in a way he had never experienced since the accident. Lucas slowly walked closer to the table where Oliver was sitting. The boy proudly lifted his drawing once again. "Look, mister, this is my family," Oliver said cheerfully. Lucas studied the simple picture of 3 figures standing together near the ocean, the child drawn carefully between the 2 taller shapes. As he looked at it, a sudden rush of emotions moved through him like a door opening somewhere deep inside his mind. Images began flashing in fragments. A quiet balcony beneath city lights. A ring held between trembling fingers. A voice promising forever. Lucas closed his eyes for a moment as the memories continued pushing forward, no longer distant or broken, but suddenly clear. When he opened his eyes again, he looked directly at Noah with a mixture of shock and understanding. "Noah," he said quietly. The way he spoke the name was different now, not the polite tone of a stranger, but the voice of someone remembering a life that had once belonged to him. Noah felt his breath catch as he saw the change in Lucas's expression. Eleanor stepped forward immediately, her calm composure tightening slightly. "Lucas, you should not rush to conclusions," she said carefully. But Lucas did not look at her. His attention remained on Noah and Oliver, the pieces of his past finally connecting in a way that could no longer be denied. 3 years, Lucas said slowly, as if speaking the truth aloud helped him understand it fully. 3 years of memories were missing, and they were not just lost. They were taken away. He looked down at Oliver, who was watching the conversation with innocent curiosity. Lucas knelt slightly so that he was at the child's eye level. "What is your name?" he asked gently. "Oliver," the boy answered with a proud smile. Lucas felt something inside his chest settle into place with quiet certainty. He looked back at Noah, the understanding in his eyes now unmistakable. "He is my son." Eleanor's expression hardened slightly, but Lucas stood and faced her calmly. "You may have erased the records," he said firmly, "but you cannot erase the truth." For the first time in 3 years, Lucas Harrington made a decision that had nothing to do with corporate strategy or family expectations. He walked back toward Noah and Oliver and placed a steady hand on the table beside them. "I will not lose my family again," he said quietly. Months later, the harbor in Havenport looked exactly the same as it always had, but for Noah and Lucas, everything had changed. Their second wedding took place on the same quiet shoreline where Oliver loved to collect stones. The ceremony was simple, surrounded by close friends and the peaceful sound of waves meeting the sand. Oliver stood proudly beside them holding the rings, and when Lucas placed the band gently onto Noah's finger this time, there were no secrets and no shadows between them. Life moved forward slowly, but with a warmth they had once believed was lost forever. And not long after, their small family welcomed a baby girl into the world, completing the home they had fought so hard to rebuild. In the quiet evenings that followed, Lucas often stood by the window watching Noah read bedtime stories while Oliver listened beside his baby sister. Each time he saw them together, Lucas felt the same quiet promise echo inside his heart. Some memories may fade with time, but love that is real will always find its way back home.